Today I'll be explaining the plot, setting, and genre of Margaret Atwood's Oryx and Crake. This book offers two narratives, the survival story of the self-titled abominable snowman, who is possibly the only survivor of the end of humanity, and Jimmy, an average boy who grows up in a near future that leads to this same end of the world. Conveniently, Jimmy and Snowman happen to be the same person, and Jimmy's narrative is presented in the form of Snowman's recollections of his life. These two characters' stories progress towards a single moment in time, the mysterious cause of the apocalyptic fall of humanity. Jimmy's retelling is presented in simple chronological order and ends with an explanation of what happened to the world. Snowman literally retraces his steps in an attempt to recover some supplies and eventually finds himself once again at the place where Jimmy's life ends and Snowman's begins. In broad terms, and in chronological order, the plot develops as follows. Jimmy is a young boy struggling to deal with the tension between his estranged scientist parents. Both neglect their child to a certain extent. Jimmy's father is a successful corporate employee, and his mother is a failed stay-at-home parent. Neither is very competent at communicating with their son. A few years later, Jimmy's mother abandons her family and proceeds to fight against the world's scientific corporations. A socially awkward teenage Jimmy eventually meets another boy named Glenn, who grows up to be the self-named scientific genius Crake. These two boys have much in common, not uniquely a budding obsession with pornography. Eventually, they happen upon an image of a mesmerizing child porn actress who will later become the enigmatic Oryx. Jimmy's talents focus primarily on words and abstract ideas, skills which are not particularly valuable in his technologically advanced world. He attends an aging and decrepit university, and eventually finds employment by focusing his abilities on promoting and advertising corporately created scientific products. Jimmy's sex life is punctuated by an obsession with physical intimacy and a lack of romantic connection. As an adult, he has a number of sexual liaisons, none of which offer him a lasting emotional connection. The revelation that his mother has been executed leads Jimmy to become a recluse. At the height of Jimmy's depression, Crake reappears. Now an incredibly successful scientist, Crake works for a corporation that is developing a new sex drug that will help reduce global overpopulation through sterilization without the user's knowledge. Somehow, Crake has been able to track down the mysterious Oryx. Jimmy is still very attracted to Oryx and attempts to decipher her past in a questioning manner that she easily diffuses. Oryx is educating the childlike children of Crake, genetically modified superhumans that their namesake has created. Oryx and Crake seem to have some sort of romantic liaison, yet despite the presence of Crake, Jimmy and Oryx begin a sexual relationship. Jimmy is eventually left in control of the inner sanctum of the corporation in Crake's experiments. Both Crake and Oryx are conveniently absent when news reports indicate that a new supervirus is rapidly destroying humanity. Crake is the one responsible for the virus and has tricked Oryx into spreading it around the planet disguised as the sex drug. Crake reappears at the compound and murders Oryx in front of Jimmy. Jimmy kills Crake and any hope of a cure for the rampaging disease. As the world dies around him, Jimmy spends the next few weeks locked in the compound with the blissfully ignorant children of Crake. He finally reveals himself to them as Snowman and leads them out into the world. Snowman's life now becomes one of basic survival. The Crakers are able to endure well enough on their own, but Snowman remains to watch over them. Eventually, Snowman decides that he must return to the compound to obtain more food and items to protect himself. Genetically modified creatures harass and threaten to kill Snowman throughout his journey. After overcoming many hardships, Snowman returns to the children of Crake and learns that regular humans have visited them. He eventually tracks the visitors down, and the story ends just as Snowman is about to approach them. The setting of this novel occupies two distinct realities, the near-future, technologically driven corporate landscape of Jimmy's world and the post-apocalyptic wasteland where Snowman lives. Jimmy's world is punctuated by ideas of class and social separation. The dangerous plebe lands, for example, are reminiscent of the Roman word plebeian, indicating lower and middle classes. This setting is further characterized by rapid scientific development, often without due consideration of the consequences of genetic manipulation. Further complicating the reality of this near-future setting is the general apathy of its inhabitants with regards to ethics and entertainment. Pornography of any and all depravity is readily available to anyone, and broadcast suicides and executions are standard viewing material. The setting in which Jimmy lives offers a pre-dystopian utopia, at least for the upper class, that is rapidly approaching a critical point of no return. Whether Crake's creation of perfect humans and the engineering of the end of society is a good or evil act is widely open to interpretation. Snowman's world is an imagined future where humans have simply ceased to exist. Unlike other possible post-apocalyptic dystopias, the event that has removed humanity from the planet has left the environment relatively unmolested. I say relatively, of course, because the legacy of scientific progress is dangerously apparent in the number of genetically modified creatures roaming the landscape. What is perhaps the most disturbing aspect of this dismal future is the unpreparedness that Snowman has in trying to survive. It seems as though all other creatures, including the children of Crake and the rampaging mobs of Pagoons and Wolvogs, are able to fend fairly well for themselves. Snowman himself, of course, has taken a step backwards in evolution, returning to the trees for safety and shelter. He is ill-equipped to feed himself or survive in direct sunlight. A small wound is a deadly threat, and animals that should be friendly or at least harmless are a constant danger. There is hope, however, when Snowman discovers that other people have somehow survived the apocalypse. This realization changes the setting from one of the death of civilization to a potential world of rebuilding, or at least one where you can clean your bedsheet toga. Atwood is claimed to not be a science fiction writer, and this is a debatable point, but it suffices to say that Oryx and Crake straddles several genres. The novel itself is written as a sort of autobiography, where an omniscient narrator is mostly aware of only Jimmy and Snowman's consciousnesses. The book has elements of the cyberpunk subgenre of science fiction, with its heavy focus on the dangers of megacorporations and runaway scientific progress in genetic engineering. There are also many elements of crime fiction, as the events that culminate in the end of humankind are only hinted at until the end of the novel. Oryx and Crake, then, is a dystopian cyberpunk adventure story/autobiography about the dangers of genetic manipulation and the loss of ethics in what could be the near future. I'm inclined to agree with Atwood that it is not quite science fiction, but those spray guns seem awfully close to being so.